Well, for the second time running, it was a gallant effort from Morecambe in their attempts to stay in League One. They did it the first time round with 42 points, but last season they were narrowly relegated, but it was touch and go all year round. Unfortunately, they couldn't quite get over the lines. And this year, with some concerns over the ownership, squad's looking a bit thin. They've had to cancel a friendly with Workington. And on balance, it's probably looking like survival and consolidation is a fairer target for manager Derek Adams than a repeat of the historic, heroic promotion in 2021. But could they spring a surprise? You'd be a fool to write off a Derek Adams team. What can they do, and what does the season have in store? Well, to discuss all these things and more, I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Dave Salmon from Shrimps Live and Joel Shooter, another Shrimp supporter from the Shrimps Trust podcast as well. Good evening to you, gents. How are we?
Evening, Gab. How's it going? The pre-season, we spoke off air about this, didn't we? The pre-season just seems to go by in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, we're 3 weeks from the start of the season again. Where does time go?
Absolutely crazy. How are you, Joel?
I'm all good, thank you. Yeah, just hoping to get a few more players in the next few days, and hoping that any injuries sort themselves out.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. Before we get into it, quick note to say I'm covering all 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July on these EFL Debate Summer Deep Dives. You can also watch them on YouTube and on Spotify. And if you're watching or listening to this on either of those platforms, do give us a subscribe right now, because that helps us out a lot. And check out the other videos and episodes once you're done with this one. Coming to you first then, Dave, how are you feeling as a Morecambe fan at the moment? Because after relegation last season, there's a little bit of uncertainty over the ownership of the club.
Yeah, there is. And I can't say that there's a great deal of optimism at the moment. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. We know where we are as a club, first and foremost. I think all Morecambe fans are at peace with the fact that we went down. We had 2 amazing seasons in League One. We had some brilliant away days, some huge teams coming to the Mazuma. And to miss out narrowly on the last day of the season, I think at the time we were all absolutely gutted, because on any other given day, we could have beaten Exeter. They weren't all that, really. I mean, they deserved to win on the day. Of course they did. And if we had won, we'd have stayed up. And perhaps on the other hand, it might be, and I don't know what Joel thinks about this, but perhaps on the other hand, it might be a good thing that we're back in League Two, given the ownership, given our finances, given where we are as a football club. And obviously, with the way the squad is at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty around a number of other aspects of the club. To rebuild, if you like, in League Two, it might not be a bad thing. Hopefully the financial disparity between League One and the sides at the top of League One and the sides at the bottom, and the sides at the top of League Two and the sides towards the bottom of League Two, that gap you would hope would be a bit smaller. So I suppose on that basis, we might be able, theoretically at least, to compete a little bit more. We're going to be sad that we're not going to Portman Road and Hillsborough and Pride Park next season. But do you know what?
Not that sad.
Well, do you know what?
Yeah,
League Two.
I'm pretty glad.
Not in terms of the results, no. But do you know what? League Two's got some flipping good sides in it this year. So I think it's probably the strongest League Two it's been for a very, very long time. So lots of adventures lie ahead. But before that, as we talk now, less than 4 weeks for the start of the season, there's still quite a number of unresolved questions, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Dave's spot on to mention the improved quality of League Two this season, Joel. I think that's very fair to say. I do want to talk about those unresolved question marks, especially in terms of ownership. And I've said this before, but I think it's worth reiterating for anyone who isn't watching this overly familiar with Morecambe. When I say they've got issues in terms of ownership, I think it's so important for me to make ultra clear that there's a distinction between the people who have the shares at Morecambe and the people who are running the club on a day-to-day basis. Because in the maybe mainstream media, that might get lost in translation a little bit. Rod Taylor, Graham Howes, James Wakefield, Charlie Appleyard, the general manager as well, they do incredible work in terms of the day-to-day running of the club. But it's just the concerns over where the shares are going to go if Bonds Group investments sell, and we don't know who they're going to sell to, which is really the bulk of the concern for Shrimps fans at the moment.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in recent weeks, I think we've seen the end of the Sarvjot saga, which if I'm sure lots of people who'll be watching this probably have been keeping up with the saga. I think him announcing his interest in Wigan becoming apparent may have cooled things off a little bit, and maybe may have made Jason at Bond Group realise that maybe this guy isn't necessarily going to follow through on the whole purchasing. So hopefully he is looking for another buyer. I know there's been the announcement about us having our largest ever League Two budget, but that might not be saying very much, because ultimately it wasn't very big when we were the last time we were in League Two, and when we had a comparatively large, comparatively well-sized League Two budget. So that was kind of when we first got promoted, back kind of 08, 07, 08, 09, 010 kind of era. Obviously, football finance was a completely different landscape. You've got inflation and all kinds of factors like that. So it could well be on paper the biggest budget, but ultimately that might not necessarily mean a great deal. But like you said, you've just got to hope that Derek can do the best that he can with the budget, because ultimately we know he's a very, very, very capable manager at this level, one of the best achieving managers at this level over the last kind of 5 or 6 years probably. So yeah, you just got to hope he can do the best with that, and that at some point in the not too distant future that the sale does get sorted, because the longer it takes and the longer it drags on, the more issues it seems to have caused.
I mean, Dave, I think we're coming to a stage now where it would be fair for me to say that if a takeover does happen, it might happen at too late a stage for it to really do an awful lot for Morecambe in terms of the summer business, because we're now 4 weeks, roughly 3 weeks away from the start of the season. So do you feel like there's enough in place now for Derek Adams to assemble a squad that can be competitive at this level?
Well, I think Joel is absolutely right in the sense that the saga with Saab Capital has gone on and on and on. I think what happened with the Wigan saga, well, I say a saga, it was all over in a couple of days, wasn't it? I think that probably has put to bed any lingering doubt that the Morecambe takeover was serious. I think to put that into context, the local billionaire that did buy Wigan, from his first interest to actually completing the deal was less than a week. So that puts to bed anything to do with the EFL drag their feet. They don't. If it's a credible buyer who can prove their funds instantly, which obviously this guy could, he got it over the line. I think it was 4 working days from start to finish. So it can be done. Saab Capital expressed their interest in about October last year, and here we are now nearly in the middle of July. It's still not been complete. So that tells you, I think, everything you need to know in terms of that. Going forward, are there any other buyers on the table? The certain board members tell us that there are other offers about, there is other interest, and there would be other interest in Morecambe, because the club itself, and this is I think for a lot of fans, this is the frustrating thing. The club, as you've alluded to, Gab, is a very well-run football club. We made, in our first season in League One, we made £1.2 million profit. Now, in the bigger scheme of football finance, that's not a fortune, but to Morecambe, that's a significant sum of money.
That's
and
just
we made,
astonishing.
And we made, absolutely, and we made about 800 grand in our promotion season. The reason we're skint is purely and simply because the owners, the Bond Group, and Jason Whittingham, as is his want as owner, recalled the loan that he gave to the football club of several years previously to keep us afloat. That is his prerogative to do that as the owner and the majority shareholder of the football club. So we're now left in that ridiculous situation where we have a very, very well-run football club. And it goes right from the top with Rod and Graham and Ben Sadler, the chief exec, right the way through the rest of the board of directors and every member of staff, run the football club day in, day out, impeccably. But we're left with that ridiculous situation now where we are solvent, but we haven't got any cash in the bank. So we're debt-free, but no money in the bank either. So we're in that kind of no man's land, really, of what can we do in terms of our budget. I mean, we must have a budget. We must have got some money from somewhere, because we are signing players. I think the fact that we are signing players all on 1-year contracts, that tells you a lot about where the future finances might be. The squad that were retained all in their final years of their deal as well. So we're going to be in this bizarre situation at the start of the season where every single member of the squad will either be a loan player or they'll be effectively on a 1-year contract and all out of contract in the summer. So I think that tells you a lot about the finances going forward and where we're at in terms of the squad. Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it? I think, as Joel quite rightly says, we've got to trust Derek, we've got to trust Greg Strong to eke every single penny out of, well, let's be honest, not very much money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just really hope, even from an outside perspective, that one day there will be an alignment between the ownership of Morecambe and the day-to-day running of the club, because I have so much respect and admiration for the work that some of those people have done, and I'd just love to see them sort of properly supported and, at least have some sort of everyone's on the same page and a bit more transparency, because I think that would be a wonderful thing, because Morecambe have shown, even in difficult circumstances, what's possible. So if you give those people the right support, then I think they can achieve something special. Same with Derek Adams, Joel. He's thrived as an underdog before, but he's also an ambitious manager. Are you sort of encouraged that he's chosen to stay at Morecambe rather than resign?
Yeah, no, I am encouraged. I think I don't know exactly what's been said behind the scenes, but something's happened that's managed to persuade him to stay, and that's really good, because at League Two level he is one of the best about. He's won a promotion with us, he's won a promotion with Plymouth. And obviously when he was at Plymouth, I think the indication I've got from Plymouth fans is their budget wasn't amazing when they went up. Obviously it was comparatively bigger than ours, but it wasn't amazing. So it does give you a lot of heart, and there are a couple of signings he's made that are, I'm really quite positive about. I really like the signing of Joel Senior. That's a really good pickup. JJ McKeon, and that seems like a really good pickup. It's good to have Jan Songo back, because Jan Songo and Derek Adams, it's a great little combination. But yeah, you do back him to do well. I mean, obviously, like you say, he's ambitious, he's driven, and I'm sure in his head he'll be wanting to try and get the table as high as possible. But at the same time, I think as fans, we do have to be realistic, and we do have to look at the situation and the fact that it's maybe taking a little bit longer than we'd all like to get a full squad in place, and say, you know what, this, like I think you've alluded to earlier, this is going to have to be a kind of a consolidation season. And if that's what it's going to have to be, then that's what it's going to have to be. And you know what, I wouldn't mind a bit of mid-table, to be honest. I quite like that for the last few seasons. I wouldn't mind give my heart rate a bit of a break. So, yeah, I think as fans, we all back Derek to do as good a job as possible with the budget in this division. And we've spoken about how tough this is, the toughest division, League Two, for quite a long time. I can't remember it ever being this tough, and it will be tricky. So, yeah, breaking into that promotion bracket, I can't really see it happening, but don't rule it out,
Yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, I can kind of imagine Derek Adams ringing up Jan Songo and Jordan Slew and saying, "Let's get the back together, lads."
Yeah. It's happening all over again.
Absolutely, yeah. Dave, how are you feeling about how the squad's coming together to an extent?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. The fact that we are clearly only in a position to offer players a one-year contract, that obviously significantly limits our market about who we can go for. Obviously, how much we can pay them also limits how much we can go for. And I think we are starting to see why, when all of the out-of-contract players at the end of last season were released, why that's the case. And a lot of Morecambe fans have said to me, well, why couldn't we offer Liam Gibson a deal? He's gone to Harrogate, and well, why has he gone to Harrogate? The reason he's gone to Harrogate is because they offered him a 2-year contract, and whether he's on more or less than what he's on at Morecambe, who knows? But it's a 2-year deal, and as a pro, you want job security. It's as simple as that. If we can only offer a 1-year deal, it's going to limit our market. We were never going to keep Cole Stockton or Connor Ripley and or Dan Crowley and those kind of players. They were always going to be moving on to at least League One or maybe a bit higher, and we wish them all the best, of course. But in terms of what we've got and what we can get through the door in the next few weeks, well, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. We've got some proven quality. Jan Songo's a great pickup. I agree with you, Joel. I think Joel Senior is going to be a very good signing as well. He's going to challenge club captain Donald Love at right back. I think Chris Stokes is a very good signing. He's effectively Liam Gibson's like-for-like replacement, really, at left back in that regard. He could play in the middle, in the central defensive trio, perhaps.
On Stokes, I think I in my head I've got him as a centre back. Just looking at where he's played for Kilmarnock and Forest Green. I mean, to be honest, I think many people could probably make a fair case that Liam Gibson's best position was probably left centre back. But yeah, I'd be surprised if we signed him for left back, just given Max Melbourne's injury record.
Yeah,
and relying on a 32-year-old to kind of be the main competition for Max Melbourne in that position might. I don't know. I feel like unless we're playing 3-5-2 and we want Adam Mayer to be at wing back, I think I wouldn't surprise me to see us in for another left back.
That's not a bad shout, Joel, to be honest. I think in terms of who we've got as the squad, and I think there are one or two punts. I think Cammy Smith is a bit of a punt, potential, unproven. Can we polish the rough diamond? Probably similar with Charlie Brown. Not quite done it in the where he's played professionally so far, but clearly there is a player in there somewhere. And then we've had to take a couple of punts on a couple of others. I think Jordan Slew's a very interesting one. Again, I think that shows you exactly where we are in terms of our budget. It's gone down not particularly well in the fan base since he was announced, but we'll have to see how he pans out. I think it is a bit of a conundrum in that respect, and hopefully we can get a few more decent bodies through the door. We're going to absolutely have to utilise the loan system. There's no question about that. Hopefully Greg and Derek can pull a few strings. I think we've got a good reputation though with Premier League and Championship clubs for getting their young players, playing them every week and improving them as footballers. Then when they go back to, whether it be Jensen Weir to Brighton or Liam Shaw back to Celtic, whatever it might be, we've got that reputation of when they leave us, they're better than when they came to us. So hopefully we can pull a few strings there, maybe get a couple of young, hungry players from the Premier League or the Championship, and hopefully we'll get that good mix. I think one thing's for sure is we're going to have quite a small squad. It's going to be 20, 21 players maximum. So we're going to have to be really lucky with injuries and suspensions.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably get a bit of luck with one or two players coming through the academy, Joel, because we saw last season what Adam Mayer can do. And I'm just wondering, in terms of Adam Mayer, there is a financial concern over the club at the moment. Is there the possibility that you can cash in and get a good six-figure fee for him?
Yeah, I guess there always is that kind of possibility. How on the table it might or might not be, who knows? Yeah, who knows? I mean, if we were going to cash in, obviously it would have been more ideal to do it a little bit earlier, so we've got more time to kind of apply that money that we might receive. But at the same time, for his own career as well, he might feel that a good season starting on the wing, at League Two level, he is probably going to be one of the better wingers in League Two.
Sure.
And he might feel that starting pretty much every game this season as one of the best, probably going to be one of our biggest attacking threats. Getting 40 plus games under his belt, he might feel that's the best thing for his development. So, yeah, you just don't know really. You don't. That's the thing. It's all very well and good and kind of hypothesizing, but we don't know. We don't know what kind of offers might come in for Adam. We don't know how much Derek values him to kind of the starting 11. How much of a price tag we've got on him. So, with that kind of thing, yeah, look, you never want to rule that kind of thing out. At the same time, just got to wait and see, really. And look, I'd love to see him in League Two with us. And, it's looking like he's probably going to be one of our biggest main attacking outlets. And if we, see the kind of level of performance that we saw from him last season, then I'm sure he'll do very, very well in League Two. But we just going to have to see what happens on. I was going to say August 5th, but there's another month after that of worrying about the transfer window. So we'll see. Come the start of September, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you can keep Adam Mayer on, because I think he could play a huge part in what you want to try and achieve in League Two this season. Dave, I feel like there's a core of players there that played well in League One last season. I'd certainly put Donald Love in that category. I'd certainly put Farron Rawson in that category, and Jacob Badeau. And then you're looking at maybe even Jake Taylor to an extent, as well as Mayer. Is that a core of players that you feel like you can rely on if you can get them to start up to around 40 league games next year?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the central defence for a start, Farron Rawson and Jacob Badeau should be among the best central defensive pairing in League Two. If Chris Stokes is going to make us three, or is certainly going to be part of that defence, he's been signed to play wherever that might be. That's for sure. So I think at the back we're not going to be too bad. Injuries and suspensions permitting, of course. Max Melbourne's got a very questionable injury record at left back. I like the fact that it looks like Adam Smith's going to probably be our first choice goalkeeper. I think he was really unlucky last season with the form of Connor Ripley. Just couldn't get a game because Connor was just so amazing. But a good chance this season, I think, for him to establish himself. And he knows League Two as well with the great season he had at Stevenage not so long ago. So I think we're quite happy that we've got a solid man between the sticks there. Jake Taylor should theoretically be one of the best creative midfielders in League Two. There's no doubt about that for me. He's a technically wonderful footballer. The problem is his injury record is absolutely horrendous. And I suppose that's part of the reason why a club like Morecambe have got that kind of talented player, because it didn't work for him at League Two, didn't work for him at Nottingham Forest, partly because of his injury record. We only saw flashes of how good he was last season, and that was because his season was very much stop-start. He broke down on the last game of the season, actually. He went off after about half an hour of the fight on the final day. So how he stacks up remains to be seen. And I think, as Joel's alluded to there, Adam Mayer up front, whether he's playing more in the middle or whether he's played out wide or at wing back, he's definitely got a big part to play. I would temper that very slightly by saying we can't put too much pressure on his shoulders. He's still only a second-year pro. He's only got, about 30 games, senior games under his belt. So he's still very young, still very raw. But certainly the League One experiences that he went through last season and some of his performances should stand him in good stead. And hopefully he can be one of our big performers. But I would just temper that ever so slightly that he is still young and obviously still learning his trade. So, yeah, we've got a good nucleus from League One. We have got some potentially good signings through the door. It's just the squad's looking a bit thin at the moment. So we're going to need 5 or 6 permanent signings, I would say. Hopefully a few good, young, hungry loans. And, well, you never know. But goes back to what I said at the start. I think League Two, it's not to be sniffed at this season.
Yeah, for sure. Joel, Dave said there that Morecambe are going to need another 5 or 6. Is the number that Morecambe need the same number that Morecambe are likely to get?
I hope so. I think Derek mentioned the other day there would be you bring the squad up to about 21 players and then pad it out with a couple of youth team players to make it 23. So whether we're going to get that, I mean, you'd think we need to get 23 players because it'd be very, very hard to go through a league season on any less than that. And like Dave said, people like Jake Taylor, they're fantastic players. I mean, I think, a starting midfield 3 of Songo, McKiernan and Taylor would be fantastic. At the same time, you can't, given Jake Taylor's injury record, it's a real shame that he's, it just keeps seeming to think these things keep seeming to crop up with him because he is such a talented player and he is absolutely, on his day, going to be one of the better midfielders in League Two. But we're going to need more depth. And even if it wasn't for his injury record, you just need more depth. You need more options. People have off days. People are going to get suspended. People might pick up little niggles. You just need that more depth. And at the moment, there are kind of glimmers of a pretty good starting 11, but there just needs to be more to it. And hopefully we are going to get those across the line, those final few signings. I think hopefully we'll start to see some loan players come through because, as we've spoken about before, we've hopefully built up a bit of a reputation for being able to handle those kinds of players. And yeah, just got to keep our fingers crossed that the hard work that Derek and Greg are putting in, hope that pays off really.
Yeah, and one player I think you're hoping is going to pay off, Dave, is the signing of Charlie Brown. This is someone who hasn't, as you alluded to earlier, hasn't quite got it in the EFL just yet. But I don't know if you remember when we covered the game at Cheltenham earlier in the season, I felt Charlie Brown was actually one of Cheltenham's better players that night. And he actually looked quite creative in terms of, picking up the ball in those pockets and playing those through balls. I think he had a hand in their goal on that night. Obviously, he wasn't able to find consistency at League One level, and if he had, he wouldn't be attainable for Morecambe. But he was highly rated at youth level as a youngster at Chelsea. I can remember MK Dons fans were very excited when he first signed for them. So there is a player in there, as you alluded to. Do you think he can be that sort of Dan Crowley replacement if he gets a fair wind?
I think you look at both of the attacking players we signed, Gavin. I think I'll put them both in a similar bracket, really. Both Charlie Brown and Cammy Smith. They great at youth level, like you say, but then it's not quite happened for them going forward into senior football for one reason or another. I think they are probably about as good as players as we could get, given the budget and given the fact we can only do a 1-year deal at the moment, and obviously where we are as a League Two club. The one thing I like about both Charlie Brown and Cammy Smith is they're coming to us with something to prove. Other players, Jan Songo, Chris Stokes, they've been around the block many times. They've been there and they've done it. This is the latest club. And of course, they're going to give it absolutely everything they've got for the cause, being a professional footballer, but they've not got anything left to prove in that regard. Whereas the likes of Brown and Smith and JJ McKeon, and I suppose you'd put in that bracket as well, they've got a season with us to either earn another longer term deal or to put themselves in that short window. So I'm not saying it's now or never in terms of their careers, but you look at how old those players are, 23, 24 years old, and now's the time in their season when it's almost now or never that they need to show that they are going to have another 8, 9, 10 years as a professional footballer. So I think overall quite excited. Yeah. I think you can look at a player sometimes and you can look at their stats, certainly for a striker. You can look at their stats and they are quite underwhelming sometimes, but that doesn't tell the whole story. I mean,
Charlie Brown plays slightly more withdrawn role. He's not necessarily a goal scorer as such.
So. I also wasn't he playing second fiddle to Alfie May? So
exactly.
How are you going to get a game at that if you're playing that role with the form he's been in these last couple of years? No,
that's an excellent point. I think. Joel, what formation are you expecting the Shrimps to play predominantly next season?
So that's a good question. It's one I've been kind of turning over in my head because Derek has said on a few occasions that his preference is more of a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. But obviously, we saw a lot of back threes last season. I'm not sure how much that was necessarily a kind of a decision made out of preferences changing, or more of a decision based around what he felt was going to work for the squad or against the opposition in certain games. That it's hard to say because I would have thought with more kind of freedom. Obviously, you can't spend loads of money, but the budget was pretty much there was nobody under contract. Really, there was only very few players under contract, so he could just kind of reshape the squad as he wanted. And I kind of assumed it would be a bit more clearly orientated towards a back four. But signing people like Stokes, who played left centre back for Kilmarnock for the past couple of years, and I think he was Forest Green, they played with back three for as long as many of you can remember, really, haven't they? And he was playing that role, watching some of his highlights with them, kind of down the centre or kind of to the left side of it. So, and then also people like Joel Senior as well, who was, who, from what I can tell on Twitter and the role he played for Carlisle last season, is very much kind of regarded as more of a right wing back than the right back. That's saying that, there's I don't think there's any real big reason why he can't play right back, but. Yeah, those would kind of give some indication that maybe Derek's moving towards a back three. At the same time, do I really think it's necessarily going to happen when he's got kind of so much kind of room to kind of build positionally the squad to his kind of preference? I'm not sure. We haven't really signed a kind of Cole Stockton style target man, somebody who can make the ball stick to them. And I think that's probably what Derek would really be looking for if he wants to play with one up top. Someone who can really make the ball stick. And obviously at the moment, we don't really have much in terms of the winger department. I don't know if Charlie Brown might be kind of drafted out there. I don't know if Cammy Smith might be trying to be drafted out there. But again, they're both players who seem to have more of a background playing centrally and be a bit more comfortable playing centrally. And so, yeah, there's while I'm still inclined to think that it's Derek Adams who'll go for that more 4-2-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 if he can. At the same time, there are some indications from some of the signings that he may be leaning towards more of a back three for going into next season.
Well, there's also the possibility, Joel, that that he flips from a 3 to a 4. So if you have Chris Stokes on the left of a back three and Adam Mayer as left wing back, if you need a bit more of an attacking emphasis, there's emphasis. There's the option of maybe moving Stokes to a left back, going to a back four, and then pushing Mayer to a pitch. So
that's the thing, isn't it? I think Stokes gives you that versatility. I get the feeling he's more signed as a centre back, but having that versatility. I remember when Jim Bentley said we signed Richie Sutton. There's also been a right back as well, and it's just like, well, he clearly isn't quick enough. But we'll see if it was. Chris Stokes may well be a bit different, but yeah, that's the thing. It gives you that. I remember, I think when we were playing, who was it? Bristol Rovers, we at home in the 5-1 win, we saw a lot of flexibility and kind of how our back three worked. I think it was actually Lee Gibson at left wing back who was dropping back a lot, and then Don Love on the opposite flank was pushing up. So I think he has shown in some of his systems he doesn't mind something being a little bit asymmetrical, maybe just to kind of give certain players in certain roles that extra little bit of freedom to push on, or that little bit of extra security down a flank that he might feel is particularly dangerous to try and defend against. So Yeah, there might well be a bit of that kind of asymmetry to how he kind of wants to set up. I think, yeah, it's just I haven't really been able to pick anything out too clearly from the signings we've made. And, we'll give it a couple of weeks once we've made a few more signings. Maybe we'll sign a load of wingers and it'll be like, okay, then we're definitely playing. We're definitely playing 4-3-3 or something like that. But if not, then I'd be leaning towards a back three potentially for next season, which would be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think either way, Dave, regardless of formation, it's clear to me that there's Joel talked about needing a target man type focal point, but also I think maybe need a little bit of pace up there in attack, because if you want to get the best out of Charlie Brown, if you can give him people to pick a pass to that can run in behind, that could be quite a handy weapon to have as well. And I'm not sure I see loads of that in the current squad.
No, I don't think there is. I think Joel is absolutely right. We need a target man, somebody that has got that stick ability, as I call it, in the final third. And I think whether that's a young lone player or whether it's dare I say, a bit more of a journeyman, more of a Jan Songo kind of being around the block, but obviously plays a bit higher up the pitch. And I suppose that remains to be seen. Yeah, we haven't got a great deal of pace. And I think that's the interesting thing. We're not entirely sure which formation he's going to go. I think traditionally, Joel's dead right. Derek prefers 4-2-3-1/4-3-3. Certainly a one main target man and a couple just playing off, and then a number 10 if you like, and then a flat back four. But I think we have got the players to play a back three. I think Joel's explained that pretty well, actually. If you think we've got Joel Senior or Donald Love on right wing back, and then maybe Max Melbourne or Adam Mayer at left wing back, or even Melbourne at left wing back and Mayer a bit further forward, that does give you options, especially if you have got a good solid anchor midfielder in the form of Songo, and then you've got McKinnon perhaps playing a little bit more advanced. Jake Taylor, of course, pulling the strings if he's fit. Then I think both formations, you can see an argument for both formations. I think the one thing I'm pretty settled on is the fact that whether we play a back three or a back four, we look okay defensively. And I think the one problem we've had in League Two is we just shipped far too many goals, and ultimately it didn't matter in terms of goal difference. You can lose 1-0, down with 5-0, I suppose, in that respect. But we look okay at the back. We look like we've got some good players in the defensive positions. Going forward, we definitely need more pace through the middle of the park. We probably need a winger, and we definitely need at least one, maybe two more forwards. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, Derek and Greg can pull a few rabbits out the hat. We'll wait and see. It's certainly exciting in that respect. But I think there's a lot up in the air as well, isn't there? A lot of uncertainty. I don't think the ownership issue is going to go away for a very long time. Saying that, it'll be a done deal tomorrow, won't it? I've said that, but it doesn't look like it's going to be happening anytime soon.
You'll jinx it, hopefully.
Hopefully, the reverse psychology, Joel. I like it. And as long as we're playing against that backdrop, we've got what we've got, haven't we? In that respect.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's probably easy to forget because there is a lot of concern over the future of Morecambe at the moment and the ownership side of things. But at the same time, I still see a core of players that actually performed quite well in League One last season. And it sounds weird to say that, seeing as he got relegated. But I think if Cole Stockton had turned up to the party for half as long as he did in the previous season, I think Morecambe would have stayed up quite comfortably. But it was that striker position for me that was why Morecambe went down, which suggests it, with the core of players that you've got, and if some of the additions come in, there's a little bit of optimism there, which I suppose feeds me into my question for you, Joel, which is when I come to make my 1 to 24 predictions in a few weeks, what will be the reason to be actually really optimistic about Morecambe and say they could surprise everyone and maybe get a top half finish?
Blimey, yeah. I mean, just to quickly go back into your point just before, I think for me, a lot of the issue last season was, Cole not turning up until he bagged in the 90th minute against Wickham. That was, basically April until the 90th. And he played he was pretty awful in that Wickham game until he scored. I can't lie. But yeah, and I think we lacked balance in the side. We had these great young midfielders, but there just wasn't the kind of balance, maybe not necessarily Jan Songo in League One, but a Jan Songo type to kind of give them the freedom, but also
Gibson had to do that, didn't he, at times?
Yeah, and he was getting there. He was improving, but ultimately, he's been brought into a role he's never done before. He was needed at left back quite a lot, so it was a tricky one for him. So, but yeah, looking to what is there to be positive about this season? I think we've got a couple of great eights in Jake Taylor and Jaden McKiernan.
A couple of greats.
Great, yeah, a couple of great. Oh, terrible, but quite good. I quite like it. But yeah, I think Dave's mentioned this before, and I agree. I think Rawson Bordeaux is possibly going to be one of the better centre-back partnerships. I mean, will be one of the better centre-back partnerships in League Two. Right back's looking pretty strong with Love and Senior.
Yeah.
Adam Mary is somebody to be excited about. Rightly said, as Dave said, they obviously temper the expectations with his age, but again, he's a player to be excited about. And yeah, I think we said, yeah, the defence looks all right at the minute. There's a good kind of core of players. I think there's a good first 11 up until the striking department, and then we're kind of looking a bit like, oh, okay, where are we going to go here? So I think there is that kind of basis of a good little spine to the team. It's just about making sure there's a bit more depth and a bit more attacking prowess in that side to really make sure that we're not kind of going to get dragged down into another relegation battle.
Yeah, let's hope that's not the case. Dave, what would be, I suppose we've kind of touched on it really, the reasons to be a little bit cautious about Morecambe this season and say it could be another dogfight even at a lower level. I suppose the lack of depth and the ownership concerns, the two things really that spring to mind, I guess.
Absolutely. The longer that the ownership issues go on, the uncertainty, it permeates right through the club. It has to. It can't not have had an effect on our season last year. We know it did, because if you can't compete financially, you can't get the players in that you want to get in. I'm sure Derek last year, and probably the same this season as well, he had probably a very, very long wish list that he had to cross name after name after name off because we just couldn't afford them, or we spoke to them and they just wouldn't come for the money that we could offer. And then you get to a certain point where you can only pick from a certain pool of free agents, which is quite small at the moment, given the fact we're only giving out 1 year contracts. So we're going to get who we get in that respect. Loan deals are going to be for young, unproven players once more. So we're going to have to trust Derek and Greg to pull a few rabbits out of the hat. I think the loan players that we signed last season, let's be honest, they were a bit of a mixed bag. Some were excellent, some were okay. One or two of them were frankly a bit disappointing and probably didn't do as well as we would have liked. All that with the ownership and just being back in a very strong League Two, that for me is why expectations should be tempered. I would love to be sitting here now and going, yeah, we are a former League One side, and the fact that we've played for 2 seasons in League Two must mean that we're one of the favourites to go straight back up, or certainly challenge for the playoffs. But it's just, I don't think it's going to be the case. I hope that this can be replayed in April when we're sitting pretty in the playoffs, and nobody will be more delighted than me if that is the case. But I think first and foremost, anything above 22nd place this season is going to be considered a success.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to add another sort of positive note to finish off on, which is I think Derek Adams is another reason to be optimistic, because I think if Morecambe were in this situation with an unproven first-time coach that was highly rated at youth level but's just coming into this slightly chaotic situation, I'd be a lot more worried about Morecambe, whereas an experienced League Two manager who's won promotion from this level twice before without huge resources, I think that's a major feather in your cap. So I'm gonna finish it on that note. Listen, gents, it's been such a pleasure to chat about the Shrimps with you this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Dave, what are your plans for Shrimps Live next season?
Well, broadly similar to the last couple of years, I suppose, Gab, and that's following home and away, going to see hopefully a few grounds that either I've never been to before or not been to for quite some time, and see how it goes. I think the standard of media facility in League Two might be a little bit different to some of the glamorous media facilities that we've been lucky to experience in League One, but you never know.
You get Wimbledon, which is a big plus.
Of course it is, and that's one of the best in League Two actually as well. But there are others where the press area.
Oh gosh,
it's a good, shall we say? But yeah, really looking forward to the season, and you never know. I think you're dead right there, Gab. Derek Adams might be seeing a masterclass. Who knows? But certainly for me, and I think Joel agrees with this, as a season of consolidation first and foremost. I would love 10th place. I think that would be an absolute dream, wouldn't it? Nice and comfortable, reassess, get our feet back on the ground again, and then we can go from there. But it's Morecambe, so it's going to be a roller coaster. You just know it, because it always is.
Always is, absolutely. Joel, you doing some journalism for next year? Got some exciting things lined up?
Yeah, just crack on with what we've done before the last couple of seasons. Carry on with the podcast, do a little bit of radio anchors here and there where possible, and just see where it takes us. Really, I think, like Dave said, with this next season coming up, I think it's just you want that consolidation. I don't even want the promotion push. I want to relax. I want to have a good time. I want go to Wrexham and have a selfie with Ron McElhenney from about 50 yards away. I want to have a good time this season. But I think just consolidate. Trust in Derek to do a good job because he is such a good manager at this level. If he pulls up a bit of a surprise and has us chasing towards the top end of the table, fantastic. But if he doesn't, and he just all he's able to do this year is just keep us a good little bit clear of the relegation zone and save our heart rates, then that'll absolutely do for me. And hopefully we can get the ownership sorted as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed for that. Listen, gents, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Make sure everyone to go check out the Shrimps Live podcast. I'm sure I'll be back bigger and even better than ever before next season, and also the Shrimps Trust podcast as well. This has been EFL Debate, the Morecambe Summer Deep Dive with Dave Salmon and Joel Shooter, and we'll see you again very soon.